Bonjour tout le monde. Je vous présente Marie Duchastel, Artistic Director of the Kick.
And this is Gilles Basler, founder of the Kick, co-founder of the Kick, and the director of the festival.
Welcome Marie.
Welcome Gilles, and welcome to you. Welcome to Namur.
Voilà, 14e édition du festival. On est encore une fois très heureux de vous accueillir dans ce magnifique théâtre avec toutes ces équipes qui nous aident à organiser cet événement. Je vais juste dire quelques tout petits mots en français. Il y a cette année, le foyer du théâtre est réservé à des événements privés et donc le bar se trouve dans le Creative Village sur la place d'Armes qui est juste là derrière. On vous attend tous pour les moments de détente, etc. Il y aura des moments en soirée aussi jusqu'à 21h. Il y a des soirées qui sont organisées à la nef, checkez le site du Kick. Et alors, il y a une exposition de Vivien au pavillon au sommet de la citadelle de Namur, accessible normalement par le téléphérique, mais qui est fermé aujourd'hui pour des raisons de tempête.
Welcome to this 14th edition of Kick Festival. So this year we explore sound, rhythm and music. So that's why it's entitled Boom Boom Chak. Because Boom Boom Chak is, you know, the rhythm you learn when you start learning drums. You start learning boom boom chak, boom boom chak, boom boom chak. And so you're gonna be seeing a lot of artworks within the exhibition about sound, music, and many great installations. So check the program of the exhibition. If you don't have it, I don't have it in my pocket, but you have maps all around the festival venues to visit the exhibition. There is also a solo show of Vivien Roubaud, which is at Le Pavillon on top of the Citadel Hill. It's our museum and it opens today. Unfortunately, because it's too windy today, the cable car to get to Le Pavillon is closed. But we have a service of shuttles that is available from Place de l'Ange. And you can get all the information regarding that in the news section of the festival app. And if you don't know how to get the festival app, you can scan the QR codes that are in between the talks to subscribe to the app. It's a networking app, so you can also see who else is attending in the festival and program meetings and network with other people attending the festival. This year also the festival bar, which used to be at Le Foyer here at the first floor in the theater, is closed. It's dedicated to private events. For those who have full passes, there are some events taking place there. And so the main official festival bar now is in the market, in the tent, just a few meters outside of the theater. And every evening after the talks here, there are free concerts in the bar. So there is an after work with drinks there in the tent. And then there are all the parties that are included in your passes, and the parties are taking place at La Nef, a desecrated church, tonight and tomorrow. And on Saturday, we have a special concert in another church. This is not included in the pass, so if you want to attend, it's a concert with robots playing on the organ of the church, and it will be really cool. So check it out. It's in the parties section of the website. That's it, I think. That's already enough for today. So I'm really happy to welcome Iris and Amelie on stage, who will talk about all the hype and trends on the internet, AI, Web3, metaverse, and so on. So they do research about that, and yeah, you will hear more about it. Sorry, we already had an opening party yesterday. So enjoy the festival, enjoy your day, and welcome to Namur.
Hello, everyone. Wow, what a beautiful room. Yep, so we're Amelie and Iris, and we're researchers and strategists, and we're super happy to be kicking off this day of Qu'est with you. And yes, today we're going to talk to you about that which booms, busts, cycles, and repeats faster today than ever before. And by that, of course, we mean hype, specifically tech hype. So if you've come across our work before, you'll know that this isn't our first time talking about this subject. We first visited it back in 2023 when we were fresh out of the heydays of NFTs, DAOs, and the metaverse, and generative AI was just exploding onto the scene. A lot has happened since then, and so we come to you today with a second installment of On Hype, except it's actually on hype to the power of 2, because when it comes to hype, everything grows exponentially. Okay, but first, a little bit more by way of introduction. So we work at Backen & Beck. It's a design and technology studio with offices across Europe. And we do everything from designing and building digital products to crafting the stories that connect them to their audiences. So our studio has long worked with the emerging technology of the day, which means that as researchers and strategists in the space, we spend a lot of our days looking forward into unknown futures, trying to make sense of what our relationships might be with these nascent technologies. How might we interact with them? What might we want from them? And most importantly for us, what are the stories and narratives that inform these perceptions and expectations? So we do this work within commercial projects, but also within our own explorative track of work. So over the years, we've explored the long history of money and considered the foundational concepts and narratives that gave birth to today's crypto landscape. We've challenged the persistent metaphor of the black box, creating windows into neural networks. And we've looked at the stories we've long told each other about AI, some of which we'll share today. So through this gaze, we have always kept our gaze, through this work, we've always kept our gaze outwards, paying close attention to how new technologies emerge and the context within which they emerge. We have focused on seeing past buzz, past speculation, and moving away from hyperbole towards nuance. And so as a result, we've long been moving around with, through tech hype. So tech hypes have their own unique flavor. Like if you think about the dot-com bubble or Apple's famous keynote presentations, these were hypes that were built upon a certain type of anticipation, a promise of a utopian future, like the one that you see here, creating moments that people cheered, clapped, and cried over. But as I've been saying, today's tech hypes seem to boom and bust faster than ever before. They're seeping into our feeds, our decks, our dinner conversations at a dizzying pace. As media scholar Devin Powers would say, hype becomes, hype surrounds. So us, as actors within the space, people who navigate but also contribute to the narratives that we tell about emerging tech, we've long wondered, how can we navigate today's tech hypes, and where can we find solid ground within them? So today we're going to share a little bit of that thinking with you. We're going to take the hype of the day, the metaverse, I'm kidding, it's going to be AI, and we're going to hold it in our hands. We're going to turn it over, we're going to look at it at a distance, and we're going to look at it from different angles in an effort to better understand how hype itself moves. Because as science historian and cultural critic Donna Haraway says, it matters what matter we use to think matter with. It matters what stories we tell to tell other stories with. The narratives and stories we tell about emerging technologies frame the possibilities we can envision for the future and the applications we can imagine in the present. They color our expectations, define our inclinations, and shape the flow of attention and money. So what stories have we been telling about AI? Let's first look back before we look forward and dive into some of the lore, the narratives, metaphors, and visual languages that we've carried with us over decades and that have set the stage for how we understand AI today.
Hello. I didn't say hello yet. Hello. So yeah, let's look at those stories. So for ages, we have been telling each other these stories about artificial human-like creations that you can see on screen here as well. So there's, for instance, Gollum, the Jewish folktale figure who was pulled out of the mud by a rabbi, or I think it's going to be in cinema again this week, Frankenstein, the scientist who stitched dead body parts together to create a man-like monster. Creations that have nothing to do with what AI technically or aesthetically looks like today, but move along similar themes, the desire to simulate human aspects and the tension these simulations bring about. So, like the story of the original robot, brought to life in RUR, which was a 1921 play by the Czech playwright Karel Čapek. In that play, an eccentric scientist creates an artificial figure or artificial figures from synthetic organic matter. And he has a nephew, which is basically this typical tech founder guy, who decides that there's money to be made with these robots. And this is the first time that this term was coined, actually. It's derived from the Czech word robota, which means forced labor, or also the grind, drudgery, hard work, these kinds of things. So what happens next with these robots? So the nephew builds an empire and distributes the robots worldwide, and then they, of course, get more human traits built in to do their work better, and they eventually revolt. And in the end, only one human man survives. He's a factory worker who can still actually work with his hands, so that's a very valuable trait in this future. And we have been telling and retelling some version of this story throughout the ages, even before the 20th century, where our tools become threats, where we create machines in our own image only to be betrayed by them for a long time now.
But okay, so threat or no threat, this field of science and technology develops against the backdrop of these age-old stories. And this field comes together and coalesces in 1956 at the Dartmouth Summer Research Project. So this is a 2-month, 10-person, or more specifically, 10-man study, which is focused on exploring the idea that every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence can, in principle, be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. So this is also where these men arrived at a name for their field of study, artificial intelligence. And there was actually, in this group, significant disagreement around the term. So a couple of the participants, Alan Newell and Herbert Simon, made a case instead to call the field complex information processing. So we can wonder what would have happened if that way more grounded but less sexy term had been chosen. But artificial intelligence it was. And so from 1956, this implication that there could be an intelligence that counters ours, and that this field is much more than the development of a tool or system of computation, was cemented.
So if we move from mythology and terminology to actual sci-fi, we've continued to build narratives around this imagination space, so of man versus machine, of the possibility of a competing intelligence, which has created this deepening mystique and intrigue that easily gives way to fear and misapprehension. So the more complex the technical systems we build become, the more we are faced with an unknownability, an unpredictability, a kind of uncanniness that is both appealing and appalling to us, taking on the shape of black boxes, but also of monstrous creatures. So there's the story of the Shoggoth. This is a New York Times article that reads why an octopus-like creature has come to symbolize the state of AI. And you can see under it a meme that shows 2 drawings of the octopus-like creature, but it's 2 different versions. So what is this creature and where did it come from? So the Shoggoth, the monster that you see here, a simple drawing of, is the creation of a sci-fi writer, H.P. Lovecraft, who brought it to life in a 1936 story, At the Mountains of Madness. And in this story, Shoggoths are created to perform any task, assume any form, and reflect any thought their creators demanded. So they're shapeshifters that over the years mutate, develop independent minds, and also rebel. We have heard this story before with the robots. But this time the rebellion is quelled and the Shoggoths live on because their creators have become so dependent on their labor. So to dive a little bit more into this meme, so the one drawing that you see on the left represents the language model GPT-3, which is this alien intelligence that is unknowable, difficult, inconceivable, kind of like the shapeshifter the Shoggoth is. It's a black box. And then on the right, you see the same monster, but there's a little tiny smiley mask. It's holding this smiley face. And that smiley face is representing RLHF, which stands for Reinforcement Learning from Human Feedback. And RLHF is where, while the model is being trained, humans evaluate the model's output. So, and they reward the model for good answers and punish it for bad ones. So if you're talking to a ChatGPT chatbot and you say, I don't want this, I want that, then you're training the model, eventually conditioning the AI to do good things more often. So what is this meme trying to say? By adding RLHF to the model development process, the AI industry has attempted to mask Shoggy the Shoggoth, to slap a little human touch on this alien entity, making it appear harmless and helpful and honest, while in reality, unknowable chaos lies underneath. So this is why in the AI industry and also among AI scientists, glimpsing the Shoggoth has been used to describe situations in which the AI actually exhibits unhinged or unexpected behaviors. And so the idea of AI as a black box, as an untamable beast with its own hidden desires and agendas, as something to be feared and wary of, lives on.
Okay, so while the Shoggoth is a fable for AI insiders, the rest of us are out here surrounded by depictions of AI as blue wired brains, white shiny robots, green falling code. Like, you've all seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And then you have this image as an example, which is the entry under artificial intelligence in the Encyclopedia Britannica. So this is a publication that aims to be the internet's most reliable source of objective content. And here, to describe artificial intelligence, we get an image, actually generated on Stable Diffusion, of a white robot holding a warped device, pointing at a computer that seems to be broken, with his pinky casually, or its pinky casually leaning on the screen. Robots using other devices for whatever reason. And so we continue to perceive AI not as it is actually applied, but as these sort of C-3PO-like humanoids taking our shape, our form, our intelligence.
But as I already alluded to, we now have an actual face of AI, an interface we can talk to and that talks back. So the technology doesn't just come to us as this mythic creature or a robot or an idea, but as a product many of us have actually interacted with, and more are interacted with it every day. And that really changes something in terms of the stories we tell about this technology. So the old fantasies and fears about what this technology can become haven't gone away, but now we actually get to work with it and play with it and try to break it, and we get feedback, which has sparked a new kind of frenzy, a new type of hype we have seen over the last months. So we figured it was time to step back from the long-established underlying stories for a little while, even though they're fun, I think, to look at, and look at the stories we have encountered over the last years on the surface in our own feeds. What has happened since the release of those products like these that launched 1,000 other AI ships. So we'll take now you through a tour through today's AI hype. So the stories, the metaphors, and the people that make this moment feel both like world-changing and at the same time also just Clippy revisited. So we won't look for truth or prediction, but really for the rhetorical turns that have allowed this hype to unfold again and again. So sit back and relax and let it surround you, as Amelie was saying, but at a little distance.
April 6, 2022, 4:36 p.m. OpenAI launches DALL-E, writing a photo of an astronaut riding a horse, #DALL-E. The same day, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman writes, AGI, artificial general intelligence, is gonna be wild. Ilya Sutskever, chief of science at OpenAI, rhymes, or raps, if you feel the AGI, apply to OpenAI. Feel the AGI good version becomes a Slack reaction emoji for OpenAI employees. A new post from OpenAI, introducing ChatGPT. Try talking with ChatGPT, our new AI system, which is optimized for dialogue. ChatGPT reaches 100 million users. Tom Foreman, CNN correspondent, explains what ChatGPT is to the masses. It can send notes to your mom in a very human-like way. The New York Times reports, here are 35 ways real people are using AI right now. It's like collaborating with an alien. It's enormous fun. Is this the week AI changed everything? We see a road into darkness paved by Ask Me Anything input fields. Is ChatGPT Clippy on steroids? Clippy, it appears, has touched the face of God, the article notes. Which is a pretty big comeback for Clippy, who was once listed as Time magazine's top 50 worst inventions ever, and who Bill Gates put into retirement at the Office XP launch in 2001. That same Bill Gates now announces, the age of AI has begun. Artificial intelligence is as revolutionary as mobile phones and the internet. We see a glowing brain, which is connected with a microscope, a stethoscope, and a book. But maybe AI is also like nuclear weapons. The new technology is beyond comparison. We see an apple next to a digital orange. Sam Altman holds the OpenAI logo in his hand, the other hand in his pocket. The logo glows. He's holding the future. Title of the New York Times article: "The ChatGPT king isn't worried, but he knows you might be." Another New York Times article: "AI funding frenzy escalates." Quoting investor Matt Turk, "We're in that phase of the market where it's like, let 1,000 flowers bloom. A dollar bill is made out of green digits. AI means money." A whisper in the ear: generative AI. The investor's arm: goosebumps.
The people are now using generative AI. Harry Potter by Balenciaga.
You are Balenciaga, Harry.
The video ends with AI Harry using the curse Avada Balenciaga. The Pope is imagined wearing a white puffer jacket, potentially also Balenciaga inspired. Meanwhile, AI-generated junk is flooding Etsy. Coloring stickers, mugs, and t-shirts are being pumped out by AI-assisted hustlers. We see Home Sweet Home stitched in digital. Coca-Cola, meanwhile, launches its latest flavor, Y3000. It's created by AI. Artificial intelligence experiments with artificial sweeteners. Google CEO Sundar Pichai on the AI moment. You will see us be bold. Maybe too bold? Google's AI chatbot Bard makes factual error in the first demo, reports The Verge. The mistake highlights the biggest problem of using AI chatbots. They make stuff up. Are AI chatbots overhyped? A meme shows ChatGPT being unmasked. What's underneath? Here he is again, Clippy. I knew it, writes Mars Comics. GPT-4 launches with a huge increase in parameters over GPT-3. Andrew Reed, general partner at Sequoia Capital, is simply stunned. Wow, he tweets. Will we finally caress AI? Nope. ChatGPT-4 is so powerful that experts want to slam the brakes on generative AI, so the robot and human finger are not touching big red cross. Professor Gary Marcus, prominent critic of AI hype that we see appear everywhere, references Jurassic Park. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. Existential risk starts to haunt AI. Ghost stories are contagious, after all. Who's afraid of the big bad bots? A lot of people, it seems. Sam Altman, again, calls for US to regulate AI, and then is fired for lack of transparency, before engineering a remarkable comeback in only 5 days.
Still, it's AI for all. AI holds tantalizing promise for the emerging world. It could help boost human capital and ultimately growth. A phone-shaped portal transports us from small dwellings with corrugated roofs to skyscrapers against an orange-tinted sky. Anthropic launches Claude and is sued for copyright infringement. Meta launches AI chatbots with celebrity personalities. See if you can spot Paris Hilton, Kylie Jenner, Snoop Dogg. And then scraps the chatbots after users deem them creepy. Google launches Gemini and complicates history. See here its depiction of America's founding fathers. Elon Musk launches Grok, which ends up being way more woke than he planned. It might be woke, but it's still going to give you instructions on how to make homemade cocaine. Just bear with me for 1 second. Step 1, obtain a chemistry degree and a DEA license. Step 2, set up a clandestine laboratory in a remote location. Step 3, acquire a large quantity of coca leaves and various chemicals. Step 4, start cooking and hope you don't blow yourself up or get arrested. Just kidding. First came spam, now we've got slop. A new term has emerged to describe dubious AI-generated material. Google's suggesting that you could add non-toxic glue to make cheese stick to pizza. That's slop. But what is AI? Everyone thinks they know, but no one can agree, and that's a problem. Is the tech industry already on the cusp of an AI slowdown? We see an unpaved road over a digital ditch.
The AI backlash keeps growing stronger, Wyatt reports. A smiling robot has hearts for us, but we're very annoyed by its relentlessly positive, sycophantic tone. Clanker, a term popularized by a Star Wars show, becomes an anti-AI rallying cry. So we see a tiny robot with a broken heart crying digital tears into its helmet. Did you just say the C word, the OG Star Wars Clanker asks? Apple launches AI for the rest of us, which is a little throwback to Macintosh for the rest of us. OpenAI just wants to be your future operating system. Maybe AI is just kind of ordinary, or maybe it's a Death Star. With the release of ChatGPT-5, Sam Altman wordlessly posts an image of the Death Star on the horizon. The same Star Wars superweapon that needs to be destroyed for the good of the galaxy, so we're kind of confused here. The New York Times seems to get it. The AI prompt that could end the world. You see a glowing orb expand into the shape of a mushroom, a cloud, a wave. The article notes that it looks like ChatGPT-5 can do things no other AI can do. How dangerous are LLMs really? We see red eyes looming in the background behind a smiley, shoggothi conversational AI. A different set of eyes now. AI progress is increasingly invisible. What is visible is Sora 2, which launches in September. The most liked comment is a meme. Finally, pure slop. AI is failing at an overwhelming majority of companies using it, MIT study finds. Sam Altman says AGI is not a super useful term. He's no longer feeling the AGI. Is an AI winter coming? Sam has yet another take. AI is now integrated, superintelligence is coming. From human brains to artificial narrow intelligence to artificial general intelligence to artificial superintelligence. Brain exploded. So we're right on the cusp. A graph from a chapter called From AGI to Superintelligence, the Intelligence Explosion. See the little human there? It's written by former OpenAI researcher Leopold Aschenbrenner. It's time to feel the SAI right now.
Okay, thanks for taking that stroll with us. I hope you felt nostalgic and warm and cozy. So hypes stack in our feeds, in our minds. These tweets, articles, headlines, memes, they build upon these age-old tales and the long-established narratives that we talked about at the beginning and create something that can be difficult to see through, something that surrounds. And yet, if we can hold it all at a distance, a few things come into focus.
So at the heart of this hype are a few recurring narratives. So first there's, the type is a bit small, so I will just read it. So first there's immediacy, it's happening now, and inevitability, it's happening for sure. So think about Bill Gates's, the age of AI has begun. Secondly, there's scale and impact. So this technology will touch all aspects of life. It will change how we work, communicate, create, care, learn, live, make love, everything. The impact will be beyond our imagination. So think of the Atlantic article that says, is this the week AI changed everything? The nowness and realness of the inevitable change pushes us to take action. Think, let 1,000 flowers bloom, AI funding frenzy escalates, or back to the Czech play, RUR, and the story of the first robot. Only one man survives the robot rebellion. In this new era, there will be winners and losers, and it's time to act now to redirect your time and money and attention while you still can. So this says call to action. And together, these narratives serve as the rhetorical heart of any tech hype. With every element, the story gets a little or a lot stronger.
Okay, but of course there's more. So fueling the spread of these narratives is language, how these stories are told. So first, sweeping statements. Think artificial intelligence is as revolutionary as mobile phones and the internet. These phrases are compelling enough to spark imagination and broad enough to have wide appeal without getting too caught up in the details. Hypes also promise a fundamental change to what came before. So umbrella terms like superintelligence, or before that, artificial general intelligence, or before that, artificial intelligence itself, invite everyone in. They spark imagination. They provide a rallying point, a North Star, even though most of the time we're not entirely sure what they mean. And for some, this vagueness is frustrating. But for others, it's actually proof of how emerging the technology is, of its emergingness. So why don't we know what AGI actually means? It's because we're in the process of defining it. This is what it feels like to be on the new frontier. In dealing with new technologies, hypes often fall back on established, even nostalgic tropes to make the unfamiliar familiar. So you can think about the return of Clippy, the rebirth of the Shoggoth, the robot and human fingers touching or not touching, conjuring Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. These are remediations of ideas and visual tropes that are deeply embedded in our collective memory. Shortcuts that quickly imbue a technology with meaning, possibility, and in this instance, also warning. And so by remixing the familiar and speaking in terms that are vague but compelling, this language lends force to the narratives at work.
So every hype also has a hype man. It's usually men who are doing the hyping. To carry these narratives and language, we have voices. So visionaries, and I think the most prominent one that we just saw is, for instance, OpenAI Sam Altman, have no qualms about making the big claims or using the sweeping statements. They have the following to give the key narratives momentum and to steer the hype as desired. Whether it's AI is going to be wild on the one hand or AI needs to be regulated on the other, these voices will resonate through our feeds, so we'll take note of them wherever we go. But at the same time, hypes also feed off a little tension, a little outrage. So critics and journalists to question what AI actually is, looking at it closely, or signing open letters to oppose its further development in response, amplify the technology in question, and often give credence to its potential impact. If the emerging tech will result in winners and losers tomorrow, there should be proponents and critics today. Hype really much deals in attention, and you don't fear or critique what is not worthy of it. But yeah, there are a lot of us that are not convinced by all the discourse, and this is where the everyday people come in. Stories of how regular people are using, for instance, ChatGPT to make the narratives relatable. People who make and circulate the memes, who test the limits of various chatbots and then post about it on Reddit, who coin terms like clanker and play with it. They further amplify the fears or fantasies we might have about the technology, or they make the conversation increasingly mundane. And as these voices become more vocal in the discourse, prominent AI voices try to redirect the media's attention to something on the horizon they can only see. So the visionaries can see beyond the chatbot that there is ACI or ASI or superintelligence, which is unattainable for ordinary people, which is another term, another North Star. And combined, these voices are literally in conversation. They wield and provide momentum to narratives and language.
Right, so these elements come together to create this kind of movement that is hype, as we keep saying, this surrounding force. And of course, each tech hype comes together differently, shaped by, among many things, the tradition of the technology, the level of the product advancement, the original promise of the tech itself. But generally, this model holds, and we've seen it hold across the many hypes we've seen over the last few years, metaverse, Web3, etc. Still, though, as we were putting this last stroll together and thinking about this talk, something about the current AI feels different. And it's because it's not all empty promises this time around. The last 3 years have been punctuated by release after release. We started with these new frontier models, and then now increasingly we have apps that are built on top of them that integrate these models into new and familiar products that have reached enormous levels of adoption. This is from a couple months ago that ChatGPT now has 700 million weekly users. So what does that mean for hype? Like, what happens to a hype then? What happens when there are products amidst the promises? Maybe it's helpful to move away from what makes up a hype and to think about how a hype moves. So many of you might be familiar with this line. It's a graphic representation of hype called the Gartner hype cycle. And it's a model that's widely known, referenced, and also critiqued. It was created in 1995 by analyst Jackie Fenn, and it considers the visibility of expectations around attention given to an emerging technology over time, breaking it down into 5 phases. So first, you have a technology trigger, a potential technology breakthrough that kicks things off. This could look like early proof of concept stories, and then this triggers significant publicity. Often, no usable products exist, and commercial viability is unproven. Then you go to a peak of inflated expectations. So you have early publicity, which produces a number of success stories, often accompanied by scores of failure. Some companies might take action, others might not. Then we fall into a trough of disillusionment. So interest wanes as experiments and implementations fail to deliver. Producers of the technology shake out or fail. Investments continue only if the surviving providers improve their products to the satisfaction of early adopters. Then we go to the slope of enlightenment. So then instances of how the technology can benefit companies start to become a little bit more widely understood again. You have second and third generation products appearing, and companies start funding pilots, though some remain cautious. And actually, to note, many emerging technologies don't actually make it this far. Finally, we get to the plateau of productivity. We start to see mainstream adoption of the technology. The criteria for what the technology needs to be is more clearly defined, and the technology's broad market relevance starts to pay off. Okay, so that's that model, the Gartner hype cycle. So as I said, this graph has been widely critiqued, and that's for a couple different reasons. First, for not actually being applicable to most tech hypes. I think The Economist did a study of tech hypes in the last 30 years, and very few followed this line. And second, for really centering the perspective of commercial interests. This graph was made by a consultancy for business, and so it reflects that very much. But still, we do feel some sort of sense of recognition, some sense that this relates to this stroll, this hype that we just walked through.
But we thought it would be good to strip and look at it again and sort of apply what we just learned to this model. So we stripped the Gartner hype cycle from its labels, taking what we just saw into account, and we wanted to add some nuance to it. If we look at the line itself, we see a very clear-cut movement. So it goes up, it goes down, and then it levels somewhere in the middle, like a perfect model does. But based on the hypes we just looked at, it might actually look a little bit more like this, which is a slightly more awkward tendency, but it kind of helps us following it a little bit better. So going left to right, the upward moving trend, we think, still remains very steep. So if you think about the hype that we just discussed, you see these 2 new releases that perform better than anyone, including those working on them, ever expected, which causes this visibility peak. AI is going to be wild, is on top. With widespread adoption, 1 million users in 2 months, there's plenty of room for the big claims. But the uptake also has been so sudden for these companies, so unexpected, that the technology itself starts to lag behind. And then the models start to falter, and attention drops as well. But we didn't feel that it was actually like a clean downward line. New competitors keep appearing, so we saw all of these new companies releasing their models, etc., one after the other, and each time this fuels the momentum and instantly scrutinizes the moment it goes live. So it's kind of this back and forth between models being released, but then also being reviewed and critiqued at the same time, creating this up and down movement. Everything is being stress tested in real time, making the consequences both immediate and far-reaching. But at some point, the models falter too often, the data shows that AI is failing most companies using it, etc., etc. So signs of a bubble appear, which then, the AI winter is being proclaimed, both by visionaries and people in the field. And in response, AI gets repositioned, so reframed as something else. Now the grand expectations have faltered, and old terms that have become so empty as to mean nothing get shed. So AI, AGI is not a useful term, and AI is just a tool. And that creates, again, space for these new, more integrated products, like the Apple example, to be launched and get attention, and sort of steers the conversation up again. And then we see something interesting happening. We see the conversation fracture in two. So remember the sentence that Sam Altman had in the very end. So AI is both integrated and superintelligence is coming, and these things are happening at the same time. So the former, the AI is integrated conversation, is increasingly more grounded. So AI continues to progress, but it becomes more and more integrated, more diffuse, less lofty, and more concerned with regulations, lawsuits, people's willingness to actually embrace the tools within their daily lives, within the organizations that they work with, etc., etc. Eventually, we'll just call these tools probably digital products. AI will become invisible in the same way we don't talk about the World Wide Web anymore. It's kind of like the progress continues, but it becomes invisible. While the other conversation puts in place this new promise, a new North Star, a new broad and ambiguous term, superintelligence. And this lays the foundation for the next hype cycle, enabling the boom and bust of the different AI subfields. Like there's now a lot of talk about embodied intelligence, talking about the blending of the physical and the digital when it comes to AI, or digital twins, but like revisited for this sort of robotic age. Fields that appear on the horizon while we deal with the consequences of what is now right in front of us. And these elements, the promise of superintelligence and the rise and fall of these sort of subfields in the background, they feed on each other. The big idea fuels interest in the development of these new fields, while the development of these fields legitimizes the big idea. So there's also kind of like a funding interplay happening here as well.
Okay, so where does that leave us? We have been talking about these patterns and models and graphs, but obviously they'll never do full justice to the wealth of stories that exist out there. All these stories that are moving the industry forward in ways that are impossible to fully grasp. But we think they do allow us to identify familiar movements. They allow us to point to patterns and components that propel a hype, and remind us of the ways that hypes diffuse and are rapidly replaced by new ones. This is the last slide, really. Are you joking? Okay, remember those like cards that were falling and the visuals behind that? Like that's what's happening right now. It's really a hypey slide. That's the whole point. Okay, stories are pivotal to how money and attention move. It's our aim to stay close to these stories, take note of them, see the connections between them, while also looking at them at a distance and taking in the broader view. So maybe you'll recognize some of these patterns and narratives the next time you encounter them, and also be reminded to take a little distance. Thank you. We want to take a picture because this is like exciting for us. So we're just going to do this really quickly.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone.